walked up the steps, we stood on the field, we did all the things that you normally do when you get there on the day of the game, and it distracts you a little bit. But Owen was a genius. He said, let's get this out of the way the day before, the hassle that it is, because when we get there tomorrow, we'll mean business, we'll turn up, we'll just be ready to play. And I think it was a distinct factor in us winning that game.
As was luck. Huge amount of luck that had you win that game.
Defending, Wildman. You know we played well defensively.
Nothing wrong with luck, Wildman. Don't be salty.
Great to see everyone online right now with us. Hi to Zach, hi to Diana as well, who says that Wembley is also known as Manchester City's second home.
Not wrong.
Yeah, but I don't think everyone's tuning in to hear us talk about Stevie's best days at Wembley. As interesting as it is, that'll come out when Caldwell does his book, which I think is going to be titled 2 Feet on Toledo, after his love of Baldomero Toledo, Major League Soccer referee. Hey?
Yeah, Toledo will have a chapter in my book for sure for some of the games that he refereed me. He's a cracker, isn't he, Toledo?
We're about 5 minutes away from a special guest joining us. Sebastian Giovinco is going to be coming on because one of the reasons that we're doing this Footy Talks now is it's the day before TFC's match of the week. I didn't vote for it, to be honest. It was TFC against the Red Bulls. I voted for the other game.
Why did you not vote for it, Wildman?
Hey?
Why didn't you vote for it, Wildman?
Well, you guys know full well why I didn't vote for it, because that was...
Other 100 people would like to know, Wildman. Why didn't?
Well, we'll get into that a little bit later on, but it's not great memories for me. So anyway, it is a very special moment in TFC history, and the goal that Seba scored on that night is one of the greatest that has been scored by a TFC player at BMO Field. We can get into all that a little bit later, KJ and Stevie, and your identical memory. I'm sure you can tell us where it ranks in terms of goals that have been scored at BMO, but what a night that was. And for Toronto as well, when the same night as the Jose Bautista bat flip, and TFC fans can relive it tomorrow night on the TFC website as they stream the game.
Yeah, a special night for the city. I remember doing sidelines. Actually, it was my son's birthday, so it was a special day for me as well. And I remember going to the game very early because everyone was talking about Blue Jays Rangers. That started at 4:10 and TFC started at 7:07. And I think it started at 4:10, maybe even 3:10. But anyway, the game was going on and on and on, and we were all watching in the press box. And then the Bautista bat flip had happened before the game kicked off. And I remember lots of people, watching that outside the stadium before the gates were even opened at BMO Field. TFC fans watching it, and you could hear the roar outside the stadium, and then the energy kind of just translated and kind of was contagious to come in. So already the TFC fans were coming in the party atmosphere, and then they won the game. The Blue Jays during the first half, there was a big cheer for that. And then remember, they only needed a draw that night. So 0-0 could have easily been something that would have just been settled, but it was just more than that. It was Giovinco landing from Italy that day, having played Norway the day before as well. So there was so much to like about what he did that day. And as I said, we'll get into more of it later on. But it was a big night and lots of good memories for the city, Stevie.
Yeah, people will still be telling this story in 50 years' time. Hopefully it still is, but I think we might be a bit old by then. But just so special to play an international match, a match that he was substituting, but he had such an impact setting up 2 goals. And then his appetite to get back for his team just shows you what it meant to him to be playing for TFC, the form he was in, rushing back, trying to play the game. We'll maybe ask him in a minute or two, but I'm sure he wanted to start that game. But Greg Vanny, worried that he might pull a hamstring after the long travel, kept him on the bench. He comes on, the rest is history. But an amazing night. A night in many ways, and I don't think for a second that I'm the most qualified to talk about Toronto sporting history, only being here 7 years. But when you think about what happened that night with the Blue Jays game and TFC, and then the success of the Raptors last year and TFC in 17, and the success that seems to be building and coming in Toronto sport, I think it's very pivotal what happened that night, how people felt, and the kind of, well, if they can do it, we can do it, that kind of was created throughout the teams because with something so special on the October the 14th, 2015.
Yeah, and after such a long wait for TFC to make it into the playoffs, it all seemed to come to a head that night with that incredible goal. I mean, if you're going to wait all that time to get into the playoffs, it may as well be with an iconic moment like that, rather than, there had been times in the past where TFC would make the playoffs if such and such lost a game or whatever, but that was just the perfect way to seal it at BMO Field against an Eastern Conference opponent. That time of year where obviously everything's just coming to a head, and for Sebastian Giovinco to do something as special as he did was fantastic. Right 777 says, looking good, boys. Mallory, hi guys, I miss your faces and voices. Hi to Matthew, to Mike, who says he was there that night as a capo in the 116 capo stand. What a night. Diana watched it from Shoeless Joe's, and Mike as well is watching as well. So great to see everybody, and let us know where you're watching from. If you're watching around the world or in Canada, we'd love to give you a shout out. But somebody who is joining us now is the man who was front and center that night. Sebastian Giovinco is with us on this very special Footy Talks to talk about just exactly what happened that night at BMO Field when the wonder goal was scored. He came off the bench and lit up Toronto. You there, Seba? Let's see if our Footy Talks producer Kevin can add Sebastian Giovinco in. And just while we wait for Seba to pop up, KJ, you've been at BMO Field for many of TFC's biggest nights, probably all of them. Just because of what it was and the way it happened, does that rank up there with the top 3 or 4?
Oh, unquestionably. I think it was the beginning of what was to follow. You know, it was the start of so many special nights, and that was the night that many people started to believe that it could come. You know, and that was the beginning. It was really the start again of special nights. And look, 2015 was an enormous year for the franchise, and Sebastian Giovinco turned that team around and made a big difference. So, yeah, here he is.
Hey, Seba, great to see you right now. How are you doing and your family?
Yeah, very good, guys. Thank you. Nice to see you to everyone.
Lots of people in Toronto online watching this right now. And of course, we're talking about it, Seba, because the game tomorrow night that is being replayed is that game in 2015 when you scored that goal and sealed TFC's first ever playoff appearance. Where does that rank? I mean, you've got so many great memories of your time in Toronto, but where does that moment rank for you?
Yes, no, that moment was unbelievable because I remember I played the day before with the national team. I landed the next day to Toronto. I went straight to the BMO without even see my family. I demonstrate to everyone how much I love my teammate. You know how much I love the game. How much I love the city, the fans, the whole organization, the MLSC, I mean. And for me, was a special moment.
Seba, let's talk about the goal itself. What are your memories of the goal, and is it one of your favorites in your career?
Yes, of course it was a great goal, beautiful goal. Especially because we make the playoff, no? And I think everything started from that moment. When from there we built 2017 MLS Cup.
When did you decide, Seba, that you were going to hurry home from Italy to try and make it in the lineup for the game that night at BMO Field?
No, I decide right away because I thought was a very important moment for the club because was if we win was the first time in the playoff, and I think it was a special moment from all organization.
And did you want to start that game? I think Stevie was going to ask exactly the same question there.
Yes. I asked to Greg to start from the 11 player, but he say no, it's better if you can come in the second half.
How close to normal did you feel coming on for that game, given the fact that you had that isn't a normal preparation for a game? Flying all the way from Rome into Toronto, being on the plane all day, getting straight up. Did you feel anywhere close to how you usually do?
No, I feel very good. I don't know why. I don't know. Maybe because I sleep a little bit on the plane. On the plane, I don't know. But the feeling was very, very good. Great.
Go ahead, Luke.
I think producer Kev can actually maybe move us to the side of the screen. If we just hold on 1 second, he has a clip of the goal that he might be able to play. We can just talk for a second while he gets it. Here we go. There you see Kev's nice laptop, and here we go. Can we play it, Kev?
This is a substitution, isn't it? Hercules Gomez coming off.
He'd scored in that game, Gomez, too.
Yeah.
So here you come. 20 minutes left to go.
But by the way, it's like 2:38 a.m. in Italy at this time. And this is the goal. That's the move, no? The move from the right foot to the left foot. Seba, did you think about shooting on the right foot and then go to the left?
No, yes. At the beginning, yes. But I think I'm scored from the beginning when I put my body between the player and the ball. Because if you see, I almost lose the ball in that moment. And then with one touch, I passed the both player, no?
But at no point did you look up and think, where can I pass to? Who's there to pass to? You were just set on going for goal there.
I saw only blue t-shirt.
I think this is the special qualities that you had, Seba. You know, you have the ability to go to the left and the right, but Zubara, I'm sure it is for the Red Bulls, expects you to do that little curler that we see from you so often, and he's just totally. I mean, as a defender, he must be cringing, because I know the feeling when you're being skint like that as you take it to the left. But the finish is special, mate. I mean, that is not easy. You're very two-footed, but that's still some finish with your left foot.
Yeah. Thank you, because you play some games, so you know how hard it is. So, but was great. It's great.
Yeah,
goal.
but Steve, in all his career, I don't think Stevie's ever had a finish anything close to that. I mean, he usually just hammers it from the edge of the area back downfield.
This is true.
It's
absolutely is true.
There's two things here. There's the belief, and then there's a confidence, then there's a skill set. Three things to pull it off, you know. And I think it's just testament to the confidence that you were playing with at the time. But it's so. I watched this goal about 10 times this morning. I forgot how good it was to see the number of blue and yellow shorts, yellow shorts in front of you. You know, they're just weaving in and out. This moment here is just spectacular.
Filthy.
It's sensational. I also love how the white towel gets hit in the goal too, because it was the night with the Blue Jays, as we talked about winning the game against the Rangers, and everybody was doing the white towels at the Blue Jays as well. Yeah. So when I wrote about it, I wrote about that white towel, Luis Robles' goal as well. Seba, were you aware of the big night in Toronto with the Blue Jays playing as well?
I don't remember these particular things, but I remember because I celebrate now. I celebrate like Blue Jays celebration, no? And so maybe just to remind also the Blue Jays game.
Seba, you were someone who really enjoyed Toronto and the sporting culture. And we talked a bit about TFC winning, now the Raptors winning, the Jays winning. What was it like as an athlete being able to live in a city that has such a great sporting culture, and you love to go and see the Raptors, and you love to go and just take it all in, all the different sports that were going on in Toronto?
Who played with passion, no? Who loved the game. These nights are very special, and this is why we play. This is for have this kind of night.
Well, I remember being at Air Canada Centre as it was then in the December, when just a few weeks after that, you got the MLS MVP award, and it capped off a pretty special 2015 year for you, didn't it, Seba?
Yeah, they don't give me also the goal of the year, because if not, I will win everything.
I wouldn't worry about that. There have been a few questionable goals of the year down the down the years.
It didn't even win goal of the week. Can you guys believe that? Nemeth.
Serious?
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, Nemeth won goal of the week.
Which one?
the Namath goal when he beat about 6 players for Sporting Kansas City.
Because if not too much.
Yeah.
Too much to me. So they have to share all the
They gave you too much trophies.
Yeah, you were being a little bit selfish, trying to get every single trophy in Major League Soccer. You did get obviously you had that individual honor in 2015, and then 2017 was the year when MLS records were set, and you won the Supporters' Shield, the Canadian Championship, MLS Cup as well. When you look at your career, is that the year that really stands out as being that 2017? Even though you had 2015 such individual success, was 2017 the one in Toronto you look back on most fondly?
Yes, 100%. Because I think the soccer is a sport game, and I think that night also was unbelievable for the entire city, the entire country, and for everybody was special.
Seba, let me ask you about Jozy Altidore. He joked this week on social media that he got sent off from the bench on that game. He didn't even get on the field. He got a red card in that game, if you remember.
Yes, I remember.
I know you guys are really close. And in 88 games in MLS that you two played together, you combined to score 102 goals, the two of you, in 88 games, which is absolutely remarkable. And your relationship with Jozy continues today, but how much fun was it playing with Jozy for TFC?
Oh, it was very, very fun. We compliment each other. I have a great memory of Jozy, and was very good teammate, very good person, and yes, he missed so much.
Well, Seba, there are lots of TFC fans on here this Thursday lunch.
I don't hear you anymore.
I think we lost Wildman. Can you still hear us, KJ?
Yeah, I got you guys. Yeah. So
I think he was just saying, everyone's on here to listen to this, Seba. We appreciate the time, don't we, KJ? It's been brilliant to reminisce and talk about the past and the stories.
Yes, Seba, we really appreciate you joining us on this special day. And
it was a pleasure, guys.
We'll give you one last word. What do you want to say to the TFC fans that are watching you?
I can say miss you all the fans, miss the BMO, and nothing. I hope from me the all success as possible.
Well, we appreciate that, Seba. Good luck in the future in your career. We'll speak to you soon, and nothing but health for your family, okay?
Yeah,
thanks, Seba.
you guys.
You're welcome anytime, mate. We'll see you soon. Take care.
Yes. We'll chat with you soon.
Guys.
Take care again. Thanks very much, Sebastian Giovinco, reminiscing about a very special night. Thanks again to him for joining us. And just again, a class act in terms of that night, Stevie. And as you said, we joked a little bit there about what it was like for you to play, and he gave you some compliments. But if you're defending Sebastian Giovinco in that move, I don't think you would have done much different. It was just incredible, wasn't it?
He can go either side, KJ. This is the point I tried to make. Once he starts coming inside there and he gets up his head of steam, he's got such a low centre of gravity, and his ability to strike off either foot makes it almost impossible to mark him. You have to guess. He's sold with a dummy. Zubar sold with a dummy because he thinks Giovinco's going to hit it with the right. He's back on the left. And then the point that I wanted to make as well is that the finish is just sensational. It's right in the side net, and it's hit with power, precision. What a goal, what a player. Just a great moment in TFC history, and a moment from undoubtedly one of the best players that I've ever wore the red at TFC.
Yeah, no question about it. You back with us, Luke?
Yeah, 1 second though, because we had the lights flashed, everything went off. It's like,
oh wow,
thought the basement collapsing, but no, it was just the internet went down. So
okay, as long as it's all right, we'll let you recover. It's okay.
Does this look okay, or do I need to switch back to the laptop?
You always look fine, good, mate. You always look fine. You don't need to worry about that. As long as you're not pulling any of those law books behind to teach us and anything that from the past.
Guys, you realise that I'm getting slagged because I keep picking stadiums, and they're saying, "Where's your book collection, Caldwell?" But I don't think they realise that I'm not as intelligent as used to. I don't quite have a book collection like a library.
hold on. You know, when you were teaching yourself how to be a professional footballer, there was losers like me and Luke were figuring out we couldn't play, so we better talk about it. So that's why we've got stuff behind us, and you've got stadiums, mate.
It's awesome. I'm jealous of these bookshelves, though, guys. I'll need to try and get one.
You've got stadiums and histories and trophies to think about. We've just got bookshelves. So you're fine.
Full disclosure, though, none of them are my books. I just steal my wife's.
Oh, I thought you had a degree in law journalism or something, Mohammed.
Yeah, no, that's not happening. No. I don't need to go into that. You know what? I'm just going to reset on my laptop. So just talk between yourselves for a minute, and
yeah, I think we'll be all right without you for a couple of minutes. Let us know when you're back on. But yeah, that night,
see if you can survive.
We'll be okay. But we do want him back because Luke's got a great story about where he was and what he did that night. So we do have to get to that, Stevie.
Yeah.
And that is a classic story.
You were pitch side, KJ.
Yes.
I saw you obviously in the highlights. So you were doing your usual role pitch side. And what did it feel like? What was the atmosphere like down there? I'd love to know that.
Well, it was one of those nights for me as a journalist where I didn't want to go home. So whenever things like that happen, and whether I end up writing a TFC book or whether just the columns that I've written, what I did at that time was I just wanted to walk the city. So I didn't even go get my car. I walked around the city for a little bit. It was bedlam. There was traffic everywhere. People chanting. People obviously, wearing the blue of the Blue Jays, the red of TFC, coming together at different moments. That's what I remember. But as I said earlier before we brought Seba on, the moment the stadium gates opened and everybody came in, there was this euphoric atmosphere about a game that you don't get very often at the start. Often football games have anticipation and people come in and they're excited about what they're about to see. But they already were coming in a party atmosphere because of what Bautista had done, and Encarnacion had hit the home run, and then that epic game against the Rangers where the Blue Jays went on to win it. So TFC fans, who were the loyal ones who came to that game, was such in a good mood already that they wanted their moment. And as I said earlier, Hercules Gomez got the 1-0 goal. It was drifting out that way a little bit, but they needed their moment on a night when it was obvious the moment the city began to the Blue Jays. It was obvious that TFC were in the limelight a little bit because we just knew that obviously this was unique for the Jays as well for so long. But for those loyal fans and for the fans that poured into that stadium for a party, that's the big thing that sticks with me, is that on a night when they got their moment, the night that they've been dreaming about for many of them since 2005, 2006, the birth of when it started, and then 2007 to kick the ball. They needed their moment. We're in the playoffs, and it felt right that there was such a special moment like that. And then I just remember pitch side looking around and seeing people like climbing seats and jumping sections to hug people, and it's what sports are all about. It's what we miss right now. Let's be honest, is the euphoria that sports can bring, the unpredictability, the bringing people together, and the emotions that sports brings. And God willing, hopefully it's all coming back pretty soon because we all miss it so much. I know I do.
Yeah, certainly. Me as well. I mean, I worked at MLSE at the time, so we were, chatting in the days before the game how we can be part of this big Toronto sporting day.
Let's be honest, Stevie. You were a pretty important person at that stage, even though you were no longer like the on-field captain of the team. You were like Mr. Bay Street, right? Big office, feet up on the desk, all kinds of staff bringing you things all the time.
Nothing like that, but I was part of the build-up to it, and we were debating whether to put the TVs on the Blue Jays game, because obviously when you have your stadium, your sporting event, you want to kind of own it. But it was such a big night with the Blue Jays, and we knew it was sort of before the game, and we felt like let's build the atmosphere within BMO Field, and I think that was a smart move, because by the time we got to that Sebastian Giovinco moment, the atmosphere was already on the ceiling, wasn't it, KJ? It was already extreme excitement, and that was a smart move. And I think that to share in the moment with the Blue Jays, TFC had their own moment, but I think it was a moment for Toronto sports. And that to me was what was really special about that night. Two great moments. Bautista and Giovinco will always be synonymous with that night and what happened.
That's a great point. Sorry, Luke, just interrupt 1 second. I think that's a really important point that Stevie makes. And that's what I tried to make in my column that night about somebody wearing the YYZ hat. And because, at that point, Stevie's left Wembley for everybody watching. At that point, It's all good, mate. At that point, I really felt, I started to feel a shift in the generation. I'd moved to Canada in 2001, and I couldn't stop telling people why. I couldn't, and how much I love the city, and Toronto was one of the greatest cities in the world. And the amount of people that looked at me like I had two heads when I first moved here, they just couldn't understand it. And I felt, there we were, another generation on, 2015. And Stevie mentioned the Raptors, but the Blue Jays began at the start of that as well. And this generation of people took great pride in the country and the city, and they represented it. And the Six came out, and Drake, and everything started to explode in the city that now young people take for granted. Wasn't the case 10, 15 years ago, nowhere near. And I think now this new generation has taken on a board where they represent the city. They're buoyant about it. They're confident about it. They know the city's amazing. They know the country's wonderful. We know how blessed we are to be here. But 10 or 15 years ago, there was this sheepishness about Canadians in the city. And it's like, yeah, it's okay, but well, what have you come here for? But none of that. And that's what that city represented as well. And remember, MLS and Toronto FC for 6-7 years, it was just an irrelevance. Everybody, the only thing that was talked about was, oh, look at TFC and their nice fan base, but nothing on the field. And now it was turned around, and everything was, I think, as Seba said there, and I tried to say, it was the beginning of the Toronto FC that we now know, and I think the beginning of the real start of the city of Toronto that we now know as well.
Yeah, well, I wasn't there that night at BMO Field, as you both know.
Let's get to this story, Luke.
So
where were you?
I was FC Dallas were playing against the Whitecaps that night, and it was first against second in the West. So I was at Frisco, Texas, at, I don't know, Pizza Hut Park or whatever it was called back in 2015. I'm not too sure. So yeah, it was weird to start with, because that night of the Bautista bat flip, they were playing obviously against Texas Rangers. So I was probably one of the only people in the clubhouse there at Frisco of maybe 75 people who were watching the game that, was rooting for the Blue Jays rather than the Rangers. So I was in a minority to start with. So they didn't get off to a very good start anyway when we were watching that at Dallas waiting to start the game. I was calling the game at Frisco with Nick Dasovich, who'd spent some time at TFC, obviously, so as a coach. So we were following what was going on. Then we just started to get ready for the Whitecaps game, because it was a double header. And, sometimes when you're on the road in these places, things don't go as planned, and equipment doesn't work. And, sometimes you just are fortunate to get on air at the end of the whole thing. So apart from the fact that I missed what was one of the most iconic moments in TFC history, one of the best goals in TFC history, didn't get to call it, which was frustrating. I also nearly didn't. So things didn't go very well in the broadcast, but I was going to say I nearly got shot that night, which may or may not be true. We don't even know to this day. But one of the people that was in the broadcast booth as our floor manager, or I'm not sure exactly what he was doing that night, he wasn't particularly assisting in the broadcast. We're 10 minutes from going on air. He wasn't very happy anyway that day. This guy, he decided just to try and move the camera as we were about to go on air, but he slipped, knocked the camera, knocked all the lights over. So everything just went crashing down, and we're getting in our headphones like, okay, we're on in 2 minutes. Like, so this guy is scrambling right now, just in a complete frenzy, trying to pick everything up off the floor, gets everything set back up. The swearing, it was just out of control. It was ridiculous. So that he was punching things. It was just like, it was, and me and Dasso are like, and Dasso said to him, hey, it's all right, man. I've got some Croatian in me. I'm used to this sort of stuff. It's fine, right? Just calm. Dasso's trying to calm him down, and we're getting 60 seconds, and he's trying to sort this clamp out. It's like one of those old Bunsen burner things at school, where the camera was just hanging off this clamp, and it kept dropping, and he was so angry, to the point where people started coming into the booth because they could hear the commotion that was going on. So anyway, someone says to him, as they're counting down, we're within 60 seconds to going on air, and somebody says to him, okay, I'll take it from here, you go. Right? So they're basically, one of our production teams basically taking the decision, we're not going to get on air with this guy, so we better do something else. So at which point he says, okay, if I'm going home to get my gun. I'll see you later. Right? Okay, we're on in 10, 9, 8. So me and Dasso have to turn around and call the game. And the whole of the 90 minutes, every time someone came past the door, I'm like, eye on the pitch, like looking behind me to see if this was this guy coming. And it was. So that's why that night is not one that lives particularly well in my memory. Not just for that, but also for the fact that it was just such a. I love calling great goals, iconic goals, moments that matter. And yeah, that night it was Dallas. I don't think the Dallas Whitecaps game was so memorable, but anyway,
not. We just talked about gun story
for this game when it was up for the vote today, because it just brings back too many negative memories. But you guys love that story, so there you go.
That's a great story. So nice to share it. Am I wrong in thinking, Luke, that you were originally set to do the game too, and then something happened, and then our leader at TSN decided to flip it or something? Because I feel like you had this game for a while.
There are bad vibes all around with this game. Okay, we don't need to go into it any further.
I just didn't. I wasn't. I just like.
Yes, KJ. Originally, I was on the schedule to be at BMO Field that night.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to pour any vinegar on the wound.
Nope, that's okay. That's okay. It's only 5 years ago. It's not that fresh.
But you know what, Luke? You've had the words of every iconic TSC moment ever since. You are the true
except
narrator.
that. Yeah, except that.
You are the true narrator of this.
Yeah.
Right, Stevie?
Miss KJ. You know, like I think he's been pretty fortunate.
Yes.
With some of the goals he's got to call, but it was this.
Listen. Talking of people being fortunate, there were soccer broadcasts before you retired, right? And most of them ended up with last-minute heartbreak for the Canadian teams, or things going wrong, teams not making the playoffs, all that sort of stuff. And then you waltz into the broadcast booth, take over in September. You're in MLS Cup by the following December. 3 MLS Cups in the next 4 years. Champions League final, Gold Cup games. It's incredible, Stevie.
Yeah, I've been very fortunate. I have to have 3 MLS Cups in 4 years, and the Champions League run, and obviously the final was just so special. I feel for Jason. He did it for a decade, and I never got any of the moments. But yeah, it's special, and I've loved every minute of it, guys. And I've been with you two along the way, which makes it even better for me, because as you retire, the one thing you miss is teams, and yeah, we're smaller than 11, but we're a little team here, and it's been a pleasure. I've loved every second at that stadium rocking. I spoke to Josie Altidore for a podcast I'm doing. I had a good hour with him. It was great. And I talked about that moment when he put that ball in the back of the net in 17. And for me, KJ, you've interviewed him many times on the goal. I didn't want to speak particularly about the goal because I'd heard that so much. But the celebration as he comes over that, corner section of the West Stand and the South Stand where it meets. And there's a moment where the players and the fans become one for me. You can't tell who's on the field and who's off the field. And I just love that. I think that's the most iconic moment in BMO Field history in terms of the celebration.
Yeah, I agree. I actually had a good chat with him and Seba about this for a feature. So last year, I sat down with Seba and Josie. Actually, did make it to TSN. We had to edit it a little bit because Seba left, but I sat down with them and I basically put all the big moments in TFC's history in a hat and had them pick it out. And every one of them involved them two scoring or setting each other up or something. And we joked about that celebration because Seba tries to get near him at some point. There's just no way. And Seba laughed and joked and told me about he learned a long time ago when Josie scores a goal that you got to get away from him because you can't get near him at that moment. And it's very similar for the MLS Cup goal. It's very similar for the Columbus goal as well, which obviously Javinko and Vasquez play a massive part in when Altidore gets injured and then just wraps his foot. I think that touch that he just wraps his foot around on the side of the ball just to get to the corner. There's only really one place you could beat Zach Steffen at that point, and he has that perfect finish. And then when he runs into the corner and he's kind of chanting, "This is my house. I'm with you." It's just like everybody comes together at that moment. And, I think back to the point that we started with on this topic is that those nights were really, they felt so far away for TFC fans that 2015 night was really the beginning of it. I know they'd had success in the bit prior to that in some games. And of course, there's big matches and the first goal and the first winner and the Canadian championships. I'm not, putting that aside, but that was really the beginning of the start of it. And I think that's why Sebastian Javinko, for me, is unquestionably the best player, the best signing in Major League Soccer history. And I really do think that, because he changed the franchise, completely changed it. And the thing about Giovinco is, Stevie, you were his teammate to start that season, so you can talk about this a little bit too. But he is, he's quite a humble, quiet superstar. But make no mistake that if he's not happy with something, he's going to let them know internally. And he raised the expectations when somebody like that came into that team. Teammates, coaching staff, everybody at that club had to think, okay, we need to be better. Everybody has to be better because he wants us to be better. And when he does something like that, and he plays for Italy on the 13th, gets in the flight from Rome, 10-hour flight back on the 14th, and comes and does that, and that's your best player, most expensive player, and what else? What else do you need if you're the lowest on the totem pole as a player, or anybody who's in that company, Stevie? That's the thing that they needed at that point. As I wrote, Defoe spent the year prior to that going back whenever he can, and here's another DP coming back when he didn't even need to be, and that really set the tone for TFC as we know it today, I think.
Yeah, he's exactly what you needed from a DP. They have such responsibility on their shoulders. They have to be consistent in training. They have to be out there. They have to deliver on the field week in, week out. They can't have a couple of weeks off. They have to show commitment. They have to lead. All the things was Seba, especially in 2015, that first year when he first came. Truly world-class player coming to TFC, and a guy who was still capable of having big moments in every single game. And I think everybody stepped up to that. And I agree with you, KJ. It wasn't just us players. It was coaching staff. It was everyone trying to give this guy a platform to go and do what he does best. And in that 2015 season, he was absolutely outstanding. I still believe that it was the best single season of any MLS player ever. I just think that the team was good, but he was outstanding. And how he kind of dragged the ones that were going to stay for the future and sort of took that franchise with him and just never accepted anything less than brilliance was really special. I can remember training with him, being very surprised. You see this 5'5", 5'6" guy, and you think he's going to always want to come into the pocket and he'll play like a traditional number 10 in between the lines. But he ran in behind, KJ. He ran in behind. He ran channels. He came off. He came short. And, difficult to mark as you would in training games, but a joy to play with. As a centre half, I knew as he came short, he was going to spin and he was going to go in behind, and his work rate. There's so many facets to his game. He's one of the guys that, on the surface, when you think about it, you see the goals like October the 14th, 2015, and you see the moments of brilliance, of free kicks, and you know that hours have been spent in the training ground for that. But it's the other stuff that you don't see. It's the effort in training. It's the work rate to get back into good areas. It's the intelligence to know when to drift out to the left because a team's lopsided the way they're attacking. It's the little nuances that make them like truly world class, that are special, that I remember from the guy. I was disappointed. I only played a game and a half with him, but I trained with him for maybe a couple of months, and I wished I'd got to play more with him because he was an absolutely outstanding striker in every form of the game. Luke,
did he ever leave you on your butt during training? No?
Kicked him. Kicked him. You know my theory. You know my just kick him. Even in training, toughened him up. I've got him ready for MLS.
Absolutely. We got about 10 minutes left, so if anyone's got any questions, please do send them in. Jeremy Hodgson asks, if TFC had won their 3 finals appearances and the CCL final, would soccer have moved up towards the level of the Blue Jays, Raptors and Leaf status more than it has? I followed Canadian soccer since the 80s with Alex Bombury, felt we needed to keep Giovinco and build the brand, but we maybe missed our chance to close the gap on other sports. Is Jonathan David or Alphonso Davies the next step, creating a spotlight moment maybe in 2026?
It's a really good question. A really good question. I hadn't thought about that in terms of raising the level. I think the finals certainly helped raise the level anyway, regardless of the result. We saw the numbers on TSN, the astronomical numbers, the playoff run. For me, something that comes to mind that I believe that raises that stuff is 2-legged playoffs, and that's not what we're at right now. I really think that what happened with Montreal, I know on TSM we're going to air the 2017 rerun next week. But
Yeah.
even, the Red Bull series with the fight in the tunnel, the Columbus series, how close it was, the Champions League run, the two-legged ties, why it was so important. I think that's why I just think that helps a lot, because I really do believe it helps tremendously and build those kind of rivalries, Stevie. And Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David are players that you work with very closely. Of course, that 2026 is going to be special, but right now I think that those two-legged playoff series can certainly galvanize fan bases going forward and bring in those different people who love kind of that atmosphere and that playoff series that people are used to in other sports.
Yeah, we're used to it in other sports, aren't we? The building of momentum to the kind of first round of the playoffs towards the NBA finals or, the Stanley Cup. So I think it helps, KJ. I agree that's a disappointment that we went to the one games, even though in the first year we had such an exciting one game MLS playoffs. I think we need more coverage of it. We've spoken about it in the past. TSN do a good job. They could do a better job. I think everyone else needs to become mainstream. It needs to be there. It needs to be in the forefront of people's minds, like some of the other sports are. And the other thing is, it takes time. It is generational. It's going to take a little bit of time. It's getting bigger. It's getting better, but it is going to take time. And that's the unfortunate thing, because we want it to be tomorrow or today. And unfortunately, we just have to be a little bit patient. National team's important. We mentioned 2026, but now in Gold Cups in 2022 is important as well. Can we get some success at that level where Alphonso and Jonathan and Jonathan Osorio and Scott Arfield and Sammy Piette and Liam Fraser, these Canadians, a lot of these guys playing in MLS become these household names where everyone knows who they are and wants to consume content from them, either on their social media or through their highlights of what they do on the football field. I think it's very important. But this game is growing. It's up to guys like us, to keep beating the drum, keep bashing the drum, and the people that are listening here, we appreciate you listening. Just keep reaching out to us. Let us know what you need, how we can give you more, because we're not going to go away. We're going to just keep being passionate about the game until you tell us that you're sick of us.
Mallory asks, what's your second favourite Seba moment or goal? If the New York one was the first.
Mine's is Atlanta, the free kick in Atlanta that you and I had the pleasure of calling, Luke. I think it was near the end of the season. And I know the significance maybe the in terms of the moment is not as high as some other ones, but it just springs to mind as one of the best free kicks I've ever seen. And I mean that. The angle, the distance, a pretty good goalkeeper in Brad Guzan and the goals in a stadium like that. It was absolutely incredible. And I remember thinking, he's not going to hit this. And, we knew he was going to hit it, but I think no way. And to put it where he put it in the back of the net like that was exceptional. So I always think of that one, KJ. Do you have another one?
I think of Guadalajara, actually, CONCACAF Champions League final. And if you remember, he just got booked and was furious with the referee. And there was a bit of a pushing and shoving with one of the defenders. And he was so angry about him getting booked. And then the next touch he got, he just had this, it looked like he was just like, I'm just sick of this. I'm just going to show you what I can do. And he just dribbled the ball and then opened his body up and just smashed it in. And that was an enormous goal. I remember being behind the goal at the other end. It was 2-1. And that just turned the game in their favor. And I remember the crowd, and there's this stunned look about them. And I was thinking, wow, that is really special at that point. Because obviously people were wondering, are TFC kings of CONCACAF? Well, for that moment in that final in Guadalajara, he was the king of CONCACAF. And I think, it's funny how things in sports work sometimes, because Giovinco, I always think of 2015 regular season, how magnificent he was. The playoff run in 2016, he was obviously important because he got the goal against Philadelphia, which was enormous to start the playoffs again, the first goal in the playoff history, which was symbolic that it would be him. But then it was others really performing during that. And even in 2017, that free kick that he scored against the Red Bulls, which was enormous to score that in the first leg. But after that, really other people, again, it was kind of Altidor's moment. But the CONCACAF Champions League, I know Osorio was big as well, but in the CONCACAF Champions League, his performances were absolutely sensational. And he carried that team in so many games absolutely carried them, even away from home in the Azteca. The quarterfinal against Tigres, got the free kick against Guzman. He carried that team in so many games. Not to say that some of the other players weren't big as well. Bono was brilliant in some of the games. There was a lot of big performances, but Giovinco was elite during the CONCACAF Champions League run for me.
Alexander says Seba sipping the beer in Atlanta. Was that after that free kick? Yeah,
it was.
Forgotten that one.
Him and Altidore, because you remember that there was a lot of stick for Altidore because around the World Cup elimination for the men.
Scott says NYCFC away, the Sebastian Giovinco hat trick.
Yeah.
Away fans on that trip were amazing. And here's one. Lucas says, if you have the chance now to trade Pozuelo for Giovinco, do you take the deal?
Oh, it's a loaded question. I think where Pozuelo is and the way that Greg Vanney wants to play, I wouldn't trade Pozuelo for Giovinco. I would certainly try and think about a way of getting Giovinco back in some form or other. It would be absolutely amazing, I think, for the franchise and obviously for TFC. I still believe he's got, a bit of a fire in the belly and he's got something to come back to prove. So I think you could get a couple of great years out of Giovinco if that's possible. But this, in a sense, is Pozuelo's team now. So I certainly wouldn't look to trade Alejandro Pozuelo for Giovinco.
Just for the last, before KJ, you just chime in on that. Producer Kev has set up a poll. Who is the second most talented player in TFC history behind Sebastian Giovinco? The options he's put, just so that no one blames me if the options aren't there for who you want. Altidore, Pozuelo, Defoe, or Vasquez. And apparently he can make it all happen and put it up on the screen. So if that comes up, if you want to take a moment to vote on that in the next 5 minutes before we leave you, do that. But Kev, KJ, do you make that trade?
I'm just shocked Stevie didn't make the poll.
Yeah. Mad, actually.
Do I make the trade? No, I don't make the trade. Look, I think Pozuelo is. I think he's truly elite right now. I really believe they can get the best out of him. And look, it's always dangerous going back. Our memories are there. People always have the memories of the fans, and I'm sure Stevie said that Giovinco could come back. I wouldn't rule that out. I believe you and I, Stevie, in our very first podcast after we broke the news that he'd gone and that we felt that he would be back, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's back and they figure that out. But I do think Pozuelo, at the age that he's at, that I think he fits a lot of things that Giovinco fitted. He's got that quiet unassumingness about him. He's got a little bit of gentleness about him as well that Giovinco has that I think can be quite contagious. But then when the lights go on and the switch comes on, they both have a lot of similarities in that. And I think when you find that, you don't necessarily want to get rid of that with Pozuelo's age. And I do think that Pozuelo, obviously had played a lot of games, but if he'd been playing right now, we might have been seeing another level of him because of that off season that he was had. And I do think that he could have got to the point where not quite the opponent defenders would fear him as much as they did Giovinco because he's a different player, but he is truly a difference maker and a top 5, top 10 player in the league for me.
Mark wants to know why no Michael Bradley in the poll, which is exactly why I said it's nothing to do with me. Not just because of that, but I knew people would argue about it. Joe Miller, listening from Windsor, Ontario. Spent a lot of time in Windsor, Ontario, actually, just after I moved to Canada. Loved it there.
Yeah.
Luke, KJ mentioned... Yeah. I remember going to a Red Wings game one night. Oh, there you go. Chelios. Show and tell from KJ.
Oh, it's a hologram.
Hey, yeah.
Love
Hockey
it.
Town, USA.
Went to a Red Wings game one night while my wife was studying in Windsor, so we spent some time down there. Went to a Red Wings game one night. It's the only time I've ever been able to get into Canada without even showing my passport, because when the bus got back from it, picked us up right outside the arena, drove back under the tunnel. They opened the doors and nobody was there. They just off you get. Nobody checked passports or anything. So
that's great. I used to do that.
That was a long time ago. He says, we're talking about Josie and Seba and the productivity when they were on the pitch together. Does Josie need a guy right up top with him to feed off to play at his best, like when he was with Seba? KJ.
Well, I think they could get that with Pozuelo. I don't think they played enough games together yet, obviously, to make that kind of connection. But I think that already you're starting to see there's a high level of football intelligence from these two, that they're understanding that they're on the same page. Think about that game in Seattle last year, not the MLS Cup, but the league game. that they end up losing, I think. But they played really well in that game together, creating the goals together. There's a number of examples like that. That's the case. And I think what Greg Vanney's trying to do now, and what we've seen is already in the first 2 games of the season, a bit of a shift in trying to just get Pozuelo in that central position. Because let's be honest, he wants to play a number 10. It's basically a second striker when you're in possession of the ball anyway, gives them a free role. And when you kind of shoehorned him into that 4-3-3 system in the playoffs and pushed him out wide or in that false 9 position, I don't think it was clearly not the preference of Pozuelo, as he said publicly. So I do think that, Stevie, they could play together more and more in that shape. When Michael Bradley comes back, they'll have question marks to decide on whether they play Bradley, Osorio, Delgado together, or whether they go with a 2. Maybe.
What about Piatti as well, KJ? Alf de Blasis, great to hear from Alf de Blasis, who asked, once the season resumed, what are your expectations for Piatti, and can he form a similar partnership with Josie?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think, for me, I see him more of as a dynamic winger. Piatti, I think, there we go. I'm going to vote for Caldwell in this poll. 1 second.
Last case for me.
Also missing Dero from that list. And who is the other one? Tony said Torsten Frings.
Switch off your notifications, Luke, because you're going to get it for the rest of the day. The number of players that have been off that list.
Any people who are upset should get in touch with Kevin Kennedy, producer of Footy Talks.
Good old Wildman, eh? He's always pushing the game on other people.
Or just KJ.
Yeah,
send it to KJ.
Don't send it to me. I got enough flack. Piatti's a good dynamic winger that I think can be a really big addition to this team. I don't think people obviously know how good he is over here, but obviously he's got to get fit, and we got to get a season before we know that, because if the season doesn't happen, then question marks remain, and then more and more options open up for the team to do different things. So I think Piatti could be decent, Stevie.
Yeah, I think that to answer the question, that I don't think Altidore needs a partner as such, like he had with Giovinco, where it was a front 2 alongside him. But I do think he needs pieces like Piatti and Pozuelo close enough to give him the service, KJ. I sort of think that's what you were alluding to with your answer. But with Altidore's presence in the box, he can come onto the shoulders of players, and he can get kind of in behind, or he can just come off the edge where Pozuelo plays that kind of De Bruyne mid-range ball that we see from him very often to connect with Altidore. And then he can get an out-and-out winger who's kind of whipping crosses into him. So I think for me, the key is to get players close enough to Altidore to create some kind of partnership there and connectivity to score goals. So Pozuelo's in that middle area for that very reason, and I don't think Greg Vanney's still 100% delighted with the way that he defends. So this is a way of getting Pozuelo to step up higher with Altidore, defending a 2, but then when TFC have the ball, he has a license to roam around that middle area to go and get on it and get the ball. So you've got the options there now. They're a little bit more fluid than they were when Giovinco and Altidore were there, and it had to be a front 2. And so then you had to think about how you get the other 8 guys to defend. I think now they have a little bit more fluidity with Piatti when he's fit, Pozuelo, Schaffelberg still got a role to play. Endo's been excellent early season. You're getting these different creative players, these players with different attributes in wide areas and in that number 10 role to support Altidore.
Well, that was fun, boys. Host is sharing the poll results. We're at Vasquez, 28%, Pozuelo, 27%, and somehow 13% of people voted for Stephen Caldwell.
Well, 13, I'm happy with that because that was my number.
Yeah, number 13.
0 for Jermaine. Come on, guys, don't be bitter. Let's talk about what he did when he was in the Ready TFC, not when he left,
Got a lot of air miles, mate.
Should have got a vote, Defoe.
Caldwell, 13. You're the second best 13, right? Who was the other one that was wearing 13? Was it last year?
Patrick Mullins.
Patrick Mullins was wearing 13 now. So, yeah, he dropped to second. Best number 13s in TFC history.
They didn't retire the 13 for Stevie.
Well, we've reached the hour, and we can't have much stoppage time because my laptop's down to 11%. I left the charger upstairs after a morning of grade 3 math and division and language homework.
Your dad will be proud of you, Luke. Teaching, hey? Your dad will be proud teaching after being ahead.
It's not in my future. I can assure you that. You 9 soccer coaches about as teaching as I'm going to get after. You know how they say it's the same on the soccer pitch, right? You're always harder on your own kids in terms of when you're coaching and whatever, what you expect.
Yeah, I'm having the same as you, Luke. Same morning. I get it. I get it.
Listen, we're going to do this again sometime. So check out the Footy Talks online on the Twitter to see if the next show when it's coming up. But there will be more coming up. Also, TSN's got some great games. TFC has that TFC replay online tomorrow night. TFC against the New York Red Bulls. Some MLS action coming up next week on TSN. They're going to replay lots of games from the 2017 run to MLS Cup. We got an Alphonso Davies special coming out next week on TSN tonight. It's the Canadian top 10 women being ranked. That show is on TSN 3. So lots of soccer content, even though no live games. So great to have everybody with us. Thanks for giving us an hour of your time today and being part of this. We'll see you soon, boys.
Thanks for everybody joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, best of luck and stay safe, everybody. Good to see you all.